Surveillance. You will realize that unpleasant as this is for both of us. You are a prisoner, and I have no right to leave you here alone. Then the marshal, along with Secret Service agents, took an adjoining suite and posted one man discreetly outside Cassie Chadwick's door. Hardly the battering ram and guns drawn motif we associate today with the arrest of felons. But one might make a case that it was the attitudes of the day that allowed Cassie Chadwick to pull off the brilliant con that netted her a fortune. Women were not regarded as intelligent creatures capable of duping the heads of banks out of millions of dollars. But Cassie was not your typical late 19th century woman. She spoke with a lisp and was so deaf she could not hear the judge when he sent her to prison for 10 years. She broke one bank and made others totter. She sent one staid banker to his grave a broken man, lived on Millionaire's Row in Cleveland, and faced down Andrew Carnegie in open court. She lived opulently at a time when opulence was the standard, and 73% of America's wealth was held by the top 10% of the population. She was an emigrant from Canada with no profession other than that of turning herself into other people. She fooled everyone, including 3 husbands. She became a media sensation before electronic mass media existed, and her trial was filled with reporters, curious spectators, and Andrew Carnegie, the man whose name she invoked as her father to procure loans. She spent millions before there was income tax, and one time bought 8 grand pianos on a whim, a $9,000 pipe organ, and had a chest containing 8 trays of diamonds and pearls, inventoried at $98,000. Her trial was billed the trial of the century, and she did all this by claiming a biological connection to one of the richest men in America, Andrew Carnegie. As one newspaper wrote of her, she was the most romantic schemer of the century. She was the great pretender. She wrecked one bank and made a dozen others totter. She ruined several financiers and sent one to a premature grave. Cassie Chadwick emerged from obscurity with no education, yet she mastered high finance and was able to dupe leaders of banks and millionaires and become one of the lightning rods of Cleveland's society. This summary reads as a story that might be applied to any of the ruthless barons of wealth who rose during the Gilded Age. It certainly could apply to Andrew Carnegie. Cassie Chadwick and Andrew Carnegie. One was a grifter from Canada who would eventually die in jail. The other an emigrant from Scotland who rose from a telegraph boy to create the largest steel conglomerate in history and then sold it off to J.P. Morgan, making him the richest man in America. These are different stories, but they do share a common time in American history. The amazing period after the Civil War from 1865 to 1912, when the Titanic sunk and took some gilded affluence down with her to the bottom of the Atlantic. The Gilded Age was a time when the United States came of age with Alexander Graham Bell, Mark Twain, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, Marshall Fields, Randolph Sears, and others leading the way as the developing consumer middle class took hold, and the juggernaut that would become the monolithic money changer called the United States was unleashed. The sheer amount of wealth concentrated into the hands of the few, with all its concomitant graft, corruption, and exploitation, puts the Scotsman and the young Canadian woman in the same boat. They were 2 sides of a greedy coin that pushed human avarice to the breaking point. Cassie Chadwick and Andrew Carnegie were both in the business of acquiring wealth, and both shared a strange brilliance in doing things others would never consider. Any examination of the Gilded Age must include these 2 individuals who would eventually face each other down in a courtroom in Cleveland, Ohio. Nobody is quite sure of the actual amount she fleeced out of bankers. Some newspapers have the number at $1 million, some at $10 million. But for our purposes, It would seem close to $2 million in 1904 dollars.